Hello and welcome to Lands Unknown. My name is Will, and we are joined for the last time in this series by Biblaridion.
Hello, and for the occasion, my camera has decided to actually work, which is worthy of celebration.
Yes. Um, and I guess if you want more Biblaridion, you're going to be working with Jake and Miles over on Let's Have a Booba with their primates.
Yes, so on Tuesday, I believe Miles is away, but Jake will be there, and we are going to discuss the origin and diversity of primates in the Boobaverse.
In the Boobaverse. That's exciting. I mean, you
Yes,
have, what is it, Mihirungs and Lemurs?
yes.
How much more could you
So,
want?
yes, a question for the ages.
And hello, Kate.
Hello?
Always nice to see you here. All right, so we've got, I think we're kind of in the final stretch here. I know we're going to be working a little bit on the development of some of the rose griffins into, nope. We're going to be looking at the development of the rose griffins into the terrestrial carnivores. Hello, Soup Crime. But just before we do that, we can see that now we have, where is it from last week? No. There we go. I did have some time to sketch in. I remembered that from the herbivorous sort of tennae griffins here, they do have that sort of dewlap under their necks. So incorporating that into the Forsene Griffin's design. Not sure if I'm quite happy with their mittens yet, though I do think they're kind of cute. How they have like little, I don't know, like Sesame Street Muppet looking hands.
Hmm.
Um, and yeah, we got, the sort of 10A color, gave them a nice sort of like, I don't know, I think of it as like a sloth kind of green. Um,
Yeah, like an algae tinted sort of green.
Yeah, yeah. So got that going on. Didn't have as much time to fill in the others, though we gave them a little spark of life in the corner of their eyes there. So our Griffin parade has become qu- quite crowded here for the end of it. I mean, we started with this little ancestral one down here, and then have created a variety of different morphologies from that original body plan, um, which I think is quite cool that we
Hmm.
have all of these different griffins in there.
And the big sauropod one is too big to fit on on the screen.
I I thought as a joke I just have the foot
Yeah.
um, sort of in there because it is quite large. Kind of if we go to the where's the height map? I do have a height. There we go. These are the ones that we've been working on for the 50 to 25 million year mark, and it is quite large in comparison to the others.
Yes.
Yeah, which is quite exciting. And then I do want to make them the Azure or Azure Griffins. Just haven't gotten around to changing all of the scales yet because I think these ones are blue. Yeah, there we go. Because I mean, if they're big and they're blue, I mean, they're not trying to camouflage. They're not trying to hide from anything.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. And did your did your video come out uh before our live last time? From the world
My
building, not the festival, from SpecCon.
my SpecCon talk came out, I believe, like an hour before our last call.
Right. Yes. So I thought that was, yeah, I thought that was fun. That was good.
Hmm.
And having that sort of evolutionary triumphalism. I mean, I left a little comment, but I do think it's pretty applicable to the ways that I think a lot of people sort of approach, I guess, evolutionary history and how they kind of
Mhm.
understand why we have the critters we have today. Um, as yeah, it's like, well, like you said, like, and you were correcting throughout your talk. It's like, well, it's things don't evolve necessarily because they're the most efficient, and we often see this conflation between like, oh well, if a design if animals have traits today, then those traits must have contributed to their success, um, and kind of ignoring all of these other variables,
Yeah,
uh, and then yeah, porting them onto their own creatures.
it's when I was putting the talk together, I was yeah, I didn't really have a single term for that point.
Hmm.
I kept just sort of going back and forth between march of progress and sort of anthropocentrism, teleology, all these sorts of things that was kind of all nebulously wrapping up together into one kind of talking point. And then we had
Hmm.
our whichever episode that was, the first or second one,
Yeah.
and you brought up the term triumphalism, and I was like, that's actually a pretty good, yeah, that kind of wraps everything up quite nicely. I think I might use that.
Well, hey, I think it works pretty well. So we have our forms for the. Where are they? They are kind of hidden here. All right, let's get in here and capture some of these so we can bring them over. We're going to have our rose griffin, base rose griffin at the top here. And then we have our uh, ghoul griffin and our sort of insectivorous arboreal ones over here. And they're going to keep developing and changing, and they're going to have all sorts of different colors and body
Mhm.
plans. I imagine they'll fill a bunch of different niches. We talked about, the eusocial ones, there being a lot of like, you know, little, um, uh, yeah, like um, smaller goulet griffins that sort of like have this eusocial, I guess it's like a thriving, what is it, a writhing nest of these like furry
Yeah.
snakes. What was it? Snowdents, I think
Yes.
was the term that developed at one point, which I think is fun. Um, yeah, I didn't have time to set this up. Oh shoot, I didn't have time to set this up in advance because I have been in the dissertation trenches. Um,
Uh,
I didn't even take the week yesterday off from writing. Line, whoop, great. And then so yeah, so above here we have the 75 to 50 million years, and then here we have our um, below that we are going to start to see our change from the 50 to 25 million year mark, which is where we are going to see the knife-faced baboons develop. I like to think at the end of that process, and we can figure these ones in here. And we can talk about more variability that we would see in these groups and the ways that they behave. And
mhm.
then the other thing that I already, I guess, threw up is that we are going to have more culture building um,
Yes.
on July 5th and I guess July 12th. That is going to be sort of the intersection. No, it's going to like be a bit of a gap between Bib on as guest and Jake and or Miles on as guests as we do the manual temperature mapping method for the continent that they have in the Boobiverse. So that is going to be a good time. And people can see me struggle through that for, I don't know, the fifth or sixth time. That was going to be much more manageable because it's like one continent in one hemisphere.
Well,
Um,
they know what the latitudes are, right?
yes. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Because yeah, I wasn't sure if they actually had that. Because if they didn't, then be much more sort of open to guesswork. But
No, they sent over the the they sent over like an they sent over a projection. Having a brain fart moment here. Yeah, they sent over a projection which has the latitudes. So I'm going to be working that into like G projector and coming up with what I need to come up with. But most of it is going to be done just live as we go through it.
Mhm.
And that'll hopefully work in some of the things that people have been interested in, like sort of predicting how different landforms interact with, climate systems. So, just by looking at the map with the proper latitudes, given the, average temperature, you can kind of predict what things are going to look like. Um, just based on looking at it, if you have kind of a rough idea of how the winds are moving and those sorts of things. Um, and if you have if you do more of a heuristic model of like mapping climate based on patterns, Madeline has one of those, and then Nikolai from SpecCon created a very like simple process for doing that. So if you kind of apply that, you can have like a pretty good idea of where things will show up.
Mhm.
There are things that are left out of those sorts of systems, because if you use the sort of basic wind patterns where it's the one with like the lines that are kind of just going across, that splits the world, that splits each hemisphere into kind of like three wind directions.
Mhm.
You tend to lose out on kind of basic what is yeah if I don't know what I was looking at last. Oh yeah, there we go. I was looking at mixed step ecosystems for that painting I was doing. um and looking at dinosaurs from last time. Excellent. um yeah, if you look at this more like abstract model for wind circulation that looks like this, for example, just looking at the trade winds and the westerlies and stuff like that, then you don't tend to see oh yeah, can't really see that on the screen here. Like this, for example, for the one on the left, right? If you look at this kind of ideal model and you apply that to your world, then you won't see things like the Congo, for example. And that's because, as we can see in this one, it's a bit more complicated than that. So if you just sort of apply this, you'll get something that looks okay in most cases, but oftentimes you'll end up with some inexplicable absences. Um,
Mhm.
but if you do apply that, then you can get like a decent idea of what your world's going to look like. And yeah,
Mhm.
and we'll do that. And in the meantime, we will look at these folks. So here is an ancestral ancient Zaalean and her griffin pal.
Yes.
Um, and these are all the hides of some of those Gula griffins.
Yes.
And I've decided some of them are going to be ringed, because I think that is like a fun, I don't know, like deterrent or pattern that we see on some animals, like giving them some stripes or ringed fur and those sorts of things.
Mhm.
And she's also
That's a nice
got,
hat.
yes, the hat is a mask that they can wear on
Mm.
top of their heads. But when they confront dragons, they pull it down, and the dragons will spit at the eyes on the mask
Ah, I see. Very clever.
rather than the eye slits where the open mouth is. Um, and yes, so taking the fact that all these dragons that spit, toxungents,
Yes.
exist in the world. And then she's also got a pelt from one of the Tripon Ver Griffins over her shoulders there, um, on top of the kind of like buckskin shirt that she's wearing. So yes, very, very excited. And I also wanted to have a bit more of a mixed biome here. Um, and having sort of like riparian forests, vegetation along the water there, having them in the sort of on these like ridges of the hills, which receive precipitation, as well as in the little valleys between, in order to be in places where moisture sort of concentrates in the environment. Meanwhile, other parts of the environment are going to be more herbaceous, or have little shrubs and things in them. Um, which, yeah, quite happy with how this turned out. I'm
Yeah.
definitely improving.
Excited to find out more.
Yeah. Um, when you do the climate streams, might need to follow along with you from my world. Yeah, yeah. And I think what people may also find interesting about that is, there are a lot of, I guess, edge cases, or people's morphologies or somewhat, the shapes of their continents are somewhat unique. So applying the steps for the um, manual climate method could be, requires you to make choices.
Hmm.
Um, and if you don't have the background to know what to do in those cases, then that can be, um, yeah, that can be a little daunting. There can be a
Mhm.
little choice paralysis, and like you don't know what to do, and the guide doesn't really say like, oh, if your continent is shaped like this and it's in this latitude, this is how you know handle those sorts of things, right? So yeah, so hopefully that will be a fun time, and we're able to get it done for the World Building Festival.
Hmm.
So, all right. Jumping into this, we do have, where are we?
Ooh.
Okay, so uh, 75 to 50 million years ago, and then 50 to 25 million years ago, I think. Pens, great. Alpine. Great. And so we have these two little morphs. I mean, they're quite small, but that's okay. And no, no, no. This is supposed to be here. So I think this is. Yeah, I think this is more what we had from before. Yeah, this is all happening in that 75 to 50 million year period.
Hmm.
Okay. And then from there, some of these rose griffins become these arboreal carnivores.
Mhm.
Hello, Jake. We've been talking about you.
Hello.
So they become these arboreal carnivores. They start out as being insectivorous. And I think when we talked about it before, we were talking about this group becoming ovivorous. So primarily then like starting to eat more eggs.
Uh,
And then from that, they start to eat dragons. So like kind of this leap from being um, insectivores, eating like Davian invertebrates, transitioning to being ovivorous, I guess maybe like having a more general um,
mhm.
carnivory. I guess maybe they're eating like maybe some of these are eating other small griffins and things as well. Maybe they're eating sprites, and they include eggs, and then that kind of transitions into like being larger carnivores.
Yeah,
Does that
I think
sound?
that is perfectly justifiable because there are plenty of small things like, raccoons and opossums and things that have a pretty broad mesocarnivorous diet where insects and other invertebrates can make up a decent portion of it, but they might supplement it with, yeah, things like eggs or other high protein stuff they might find. So, yeah, I think that's totally fine.
Great.
And that does give the possibility of um, some of these earlier, more generalized forms. Some of them might end up specializing for insectivory, and
Mm-hmm.
then you might
Oh
end up with
yeah.
some equivalent of like an anteater slash woodpecker or something.
Yes. Okay. All right. So
I also love anteaters. They are one of my favorite mammals. In fact, hmm, I mean,
are they your favorite?
xenothrans in general are fantastic, and
Mm-hmm.
giant anteaters are probably my favorite xenothrans. So I don't know, they're probably in my top three at least.
No, I don't think so. We were just talking about how Bib's going to be going over to Let's Have a Booba, and then y'all are going to be on here in a couple weeks. They they do have an interesting looking silhouette, is what I'll say.
They're great. They're knuckle walking,
Yes,
knuckle
knuckle
walking is all
walking.
great. They have, mouths that don't actually open properly. They've like lost their jaws so that they just have a sort of tube with a 3 foot long tongue that they can just, evert. And they've got these giant claws that they smash open ant and termite nests with, and they carry around their young on their backs. And they're huge too. Like I think a lot of people don't realize just how big they actually are, but they're like, you know, it can get to like more than 2 meters long,
Wow.
including the tail. A
Yeah.
very big bushy tail, but still,
Ve- And the tail is great. I do love the tail.
yes.
Is there a term for the side of the hand walking condition that Xenarthans have?
As far as I'm aware, I think in the literature it's usually just referred to as knuckle walking, but there might be some more specific term that I just don't know.
Yeah. I mean, they don't have like a good, they've got digigrade and plantigrade and then like knuckle
Mm,
walking.
yes.
You think that, the zoologists would like try to make a term that kind of fits in the pattern by analogy, but no.
Let me just. Now I'm
Unless we can
curious.
find one real quick.
Yeah, there probably is some. Um,
For the edge cases in the climate mapping. Yeah, that may be an idea. I mean, if someone's doing a more pattern-based model, for sure, that could be something useful.
well, I cannot immediately find anything other than just knuckle walking, and so I'm going to propose retrophalangigrade.
I think that's pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah, flange. No, because the phalange is the bone between the knuckle, isn't it? What's the joint?
I thought the phalanges were the
That's the phalange. Like this thing here.
yeah. So retrophalangigrade would be like on the back, like
On the
you're
back
resting
of the
body
oh,
on.
here. Yeah. No, that's good. That's good. I like that. I was thinking about like the knuckle itself, but no, you are that works. Yeah, here we go. Metacarpophalangeal and interphalangeal joints of the finger.
Retrometacarpophalangigrade just rolls off the tongue.
Perfect. It is a perfect term. Where is my... There we go. Also, I started using Obsidian because my Evernote subscription is going to end in 4 days. And before I was paying like, I think it was $80 to $90 Canadian for the year. But they are going to increase the plan where you get to have unlimited everything to like $300 Canadian. And I was like, no. Obsidian has a sync plan that for more gigabytes and for unlimited stuff, it ends up being the same amount. Also because I'm a educator, so I got an educator discount. So I was like, well, that's super convenient. But yeah, so now I'm using Obsidian.
When you first mentioned that, just because of the context, I just immediately went to stone napping.
Yes, I'm also primarily using Obsidian for napping as well.
Yeah. None of that. What actually are most stone tools made of? Is there a specific type of stone? I guess flint.
Like quartzes and those sorts of things. Yeah. You don't see them made out of like shale and stuff like that. Like you do need
sandstone.
Yeah, no, you don't tend to see the sandstone.
Yeah, very short-lived innovation among some Paleolithic hunters. Sandstone weapons.
We can't fight in the rain. The edge goes away too quickly. Yeah, a lot of quartz and stuff like that. Not necessarily for regular tool usage, but we also see like jade and stuff like that being turned into stone tools as well. There's some particularly beautiful examples of like jade weaponry from Oceania, though a lot of those are much more recent. But they are like, quite beautiful pieces. But like, yeah, you wouldn't make like a jade knife per se. No. Though we do find some jade knives. I'm thinking in China in particular, like, but those are usually in like ceremonial burials and stuff like that, right? Like, I don't think, like someone who's living in like a lithic industry, if they had to choose between, like a particular like piece of like obsidian or something like that, or they had to choose jade, I think they probably want to choose that obsidian just for the edge and other things. So I mean, depends on the tool. We know that different groups of different groups of that used lithics had preferences for what stone they used for different kinds of tools, and they'd trade with other groups over networks that could be quite far, like in order to hundreds of kilometers in order to get particular types of stone. So they did have their preferences, and at a single site you can find multiple different stones from quite varied places, including like local stone, regional stone, distant stone. Like anything, people have preferences. Hello, oral anomaly.
Hello.
All right, so we have the kind of pattern that they evolve from, and at different points we can have them specializing in sort of different niches here. And I do have them with, part of it too is longer limbs. So, these ones, don't have short limbs per se. But, some of these are going to, develop longer limbs to help them climb. Especially those, I guess, that are living in more like wooded environments where they can actually move through the canopy. So yeah. Though I suppose we could also have some develop shorter limbs for climbing as well. Like keep them closer.
Those are the two sort of contrasting strategies for arboreal locomotion. It's either longer limbs, and either longer limbs or longer bodies with shorter limbs. So more, very generally speaking, either more ape-like or more serpent-like, I guess.
All right, so we could have two different streams here. Whoop.
And also, before I forget, there's the question of prehensibility with the tail.
Yes, and we were talking about, I believe I may have even drew it in way back when. There we go. Yeah, here we go. Yes. We've got some of them with the curly tails with the, I guess, hooks at the ends.
Yeah.
So these could come from that. I mean, these ones could have like the longer prehensile tails. I mean, we could easily throw a... Oh. What are we doing here? There we go. Easily throw a little hook on the end. Masterpiece.
Yes.
And I mean, it's not a claw on the end, but it is certainly like a keratin claw structure. I mean, we can call it a claw.
Yeah, I think the tail claw is acceptable.
Yeah.
And what do they call it in Drepanosaurs?
Hello, not Danehart. Regarding to Chinese knives, very skilled butcher who avoided the bones to produce delicious meat. Then they produce much stronger knives, and it all goes out the window. Now, of course, very usual just to cut through the bone. Yeah. Like when you have, yeah, I mean, you don't necessarily want to damage your lithic, and it would be harder to kind of like cut through a bone Though we do see bones being broken open to like extract marrow and stuff like that, but definitely like
Mhm.
scraping off, especially when you have finer edges, um, is super important. For the Japanosaurs, do they call it tail claw? It seems like it's
Yeah, I
tail
just
claw.
checked, and on Wikipedia it says that the tail is tipped with a large, in quotes, claw. So
Claw.
they are
Okay.
begrudgingly calling it a claw.
Okay. Well, I'll honor that. And then we can also have some of these who have shorter limbs here. I mean, if they're insectivorous and they've got shorter limbs, just kind of like crawling along the trees and rocks and things. Okay. And just thinking about their social structures, um, I don't know. Like I imagine when they come down, they form uh troops or something like that. But if they're arboreal and they're living this lifestyle as kind of a meso carnivore,
Mhm.
pseudo claw, yes, claw form. Um, I think the quotation marks work well, but yeah, pseudo claw could work. I mean, I think the
But
only distinction between that sort of structure and then a proper claw would be where it is.
yeah,
Um,
it could be like a what would that be? Like a Euronix, I guess, would be like a tail claw in Greek,
mm, yeah,
if you wanted to be fancy.
if I want to be fancy. Well, I don't mind being fancy. We'll see how
Or
fancy we
just a
need to be.
harpax, I guess, would just be a generic word for like hook.
There we go. They can be down here. Uh, because I guess with a lot of primates, because I think originally, like the knife-faced baboons or whatever, I was also imagining a more primate structure to their social organization. But primates tend to be, I mean, frugivorous, just generally herbivorous, I suppose,
Mhm.
when they're up in the trees. Um, and they tend to create, well, not all of them, but I guess the ones that we have that are ground dwelling are tend to be in family groups, though that's not true for orangutans, right? Aren't they solitary?
Um, from what I can recall, largely, like males defend territories. I don't think they maintain any kind of like single sort of consolidated group for any length of time. But let me
Mm-hmm.
check that. Um, yes, Wikipedia gives them the extremely useful term solitary but social.
I think that caveat is
Um,
being added on to many animals now that we've been
yes,
able to, like now it's like bears and big cats and stuff like that. It's like, oh, yes, jaguars are solitary and social. And it's like,
yes.
brilliant. Thank you.
Hmm.
Um, yes, and
But
bears
yeah,
as well. Yeah.
yeah, they are more solitary than other gray apes. That people seem to be agreeing on that point.
Okay. So like in general, when we have, and I mean maybe like knife face baboon is just the aesthetic, like it doesn't actually refer to how they organize themselves. Though when I think about the group of predators that we currently have, um, which include what were we calling these? The rampant orange griffins, and the courant orange griffins here. I imagine that most of them are largely solitary.
Mhm.
Solitary but social. Uh, so I think something that would distinguish this new group is how social it is. Though we were talking about social structures and um, resource distribution.
Mhm.
And so perhaps these the knife-faced baboons, these critters that are coming out of the trees, adapting to a more terrestrial lifestyle. Perhaps these ones are populations that are in forested areas that, due to lower CO2 and the change in the biome, like changing from forest to mixed forest to more of a savanna sort of
Mhm.
ecosystem, they are adopting more social behavior
Sure.
on the ground. I think that could to kind of like cope with the the way that resources are distributed.
Yeah, that makes
Yeah.
sense. If they're just in an environment where they have to, like, just kind of forces them to work together to find food. That's pretty much the recipe for pack hunting behaviors. And there could be some like proto-social behaviors in the arboreal ones. They could, occasionally, yeah, they could be solitary but social or something. And so this climate change event just sort of applies a bit of a pressure to enforce those behaviors.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it reminds me a little bit of hyenas, um,
Oh, I
because
love hyenas.
hyenas are wonderful animals. Yeah, because the spotted hyena is kind of famous for having these very complex social structures, um, and they're often cited as evidence for the social intelligence hypothesis. Um, that larger brain size and more complex behaviors in humans was as a result of sociality, because
Mm-hmm.
hyenas um, are also very social animals, and they have very yeah, quite sophisticated behaviors and cognition. Like they outperform primates on several cognitive tasks.
Oh,
Um,
that's interesting.
yeah, they there was an experiment where they took two hyenas and they put them in a pen with this special. There was a box with some food in it and a gate over the front, so they couldn't access the food unless they simultaneously pulled on two ropes that were on
Mm.
the opposite side of the enclosure. So both the hyenas had to simultaneously go over and yank on the ropes to reveal the food. And they worked out how to do it in less than 2 minutes. And then they took one of the hyenas out and brought in a new hyena who had never seen the setup before. And the hyena that was there for the first trial taught the new hyena, like went over and showed it how to pull on the rope and like explained to it, this is how we get the food. And so they also managed to open the box. So they clearly have like social learning.
Excellent.
Um, so yeah, that's one of the sort of cited examples for the correlation between sociality and intelligence. Um,
Well, I definitely
I
like
can't
that.
remember where I was going with that.
Well, these critters are going to be transitioning from a more solitary but social and
Mhm.
social lifestyle to a more social uh, environment.
Yeah.
And so they can, sort of develop more of this intelligence as they transition.
Mhm.
And so the populations that manage to make this transition uh, to a more terrestrial carnivorous lifestyle while their habitat is shifting from forest to savanna tend to survive because they're becoming the populations that tend to survive and evolve into these things are becoming more intelligent through their socialization. So
Yeah.
they're able to adapt to their changing environment through, this shift in intelligence.
Mhm.
Um, and I think that may be that may be interesting for the um, the Dovians who live there, whether they're like the ancestral Zaaleans or whether they're the more recent ones, because while they do manage to um, domesticate one of the orange griffins, and I'm thinking, what was the term? I think I have it in Evernote actually. Will that go away? Yeah, I think I made some notes. Oh yeah. I was thinking about calling the domesticated versions either couchant or Sejan griffins, where couchant is like lying down. Um,
Hmm.
so like it's a herald in the heraldry that is termed for like a more calm. These are more calm positions.
Yeah.
Couchant is like lying down, and then Sejan is sitting. Um, and I do like the idea, like Sejan kind of, you know, sounds cool. It kind of sounds like sergeant, I suppose. Um,
That's where mind went. Yeah.
yeah, but also having like a sitting companion, beside you, I think is, um, which I think is interesting. The other one that I had that I would probably use for one of the herbivorous griffins is, I think it's Payson, um, or Payson, uh, which is a similar like lying down or like, yeah, I think it is also a lying down position, but it's specifically applied to herbivores. And did I have? Yeah. So that's I think how that will work. I did somewhere sort of wrote down some of the climatic changes and stuff that were going on. I may
Mhm.
find I'll look for that when we're on the break. Um but what I was saying was like they are domesticating the orange griffins, uh some of the smaller ones that are pack hunters. Um but these ones uh I think, while they will be very intelligent and they will kind of like co-evolve with the Dovians and show, a certain kind of like emotional intelligence and cooperation with humans that these critters won't. The sanguine griffins, these like baboon-faced ones, knife-faced ones, um, I think they'll show like a bit more of like an uncanny level of intelligence
Mhm.
that will probably make them competitors, which I think will be like very interesting culturally in how
Mhm.
they see these animals.
There is also a again, it's all just a correlation, so nothing definitive, but there is a rough correlation with intelligence or cognitive behaviors and aggression as well
Mm.
in some animals. So these could be just very, very nasty, just very aggressive things that they don't want to get too close to. Um, and the other thing I was going to mention was that, yeah, in the case of the spotted hyena, um, they are unusual among hyenas because other hyenas, generally speaking, are not as social.
Hmm.
Um, so it seems like because the early ancestors of hyenas were actually arboreal, um,
That's exciting.
Yeah, the I can't remember what they're called now, but the tree-dwelling hyena forms, and then there were two different groups. There was the bone-crushing hyenas, which are
Yes, I know what
now
the
all
bone crushing
extinct,
ones.
and the hyenas that we have around today. But the earliest forms were tree-dwelling, um, and
Well,
it seems like they evolved this social system as they adapted to life on the African savanna. So kind of
excellent.
like these things.
I was originally thinking of modeling primates, but we can model hyenas instead. There we go.
Mm. Also, I should just throw in as well, just to counter the social intelligence hypothesis, because sometimes I do think people put a little bit too much stock into it. I might have complained about this before, but the amount of time that people seem to praise or like revere the concept of pack hunting, as if if an animal can hunt in packs, then it must be on the threshold of sapience. Like in Jurassic Park, when they look at the raptors, like, oh,
Yeah.
they're intelligent, they're hunting together. That must mean they have man-like intelligence. No, just I mean, velvet worms hunt in packs, but no one is looking at velvet worms and thinking that they're the most intelligent animals next to humans. So, but there was a study that looked at diets in primates, and they found that cognitive um, intelligence was more closely correlated with the proportion of fruit in their diet than it was with sociality. So it's definitely
Interesting.
not a single cause thing.
Well, yeah, and I think we find um I without a great term, I think we find very intelligent animals existing in a lot of different niches, right?
Hmm.
Like, we can find, we've got different avians, like parrots and ravens and things like that. Like they occupy very different, um, niches in what they eat and how they organize themselves and socialize. I mean, then we also have uh, cetaceans, right? Like, you know,
Hmm.
a lot of smart whales. But, as smart as whales are, and they're, oftentimes like mega carnivores. When we think of like orcas and stuff like that with their very complex
Hmm.
social structures, we also have like uh, elephants, right? Very big mega herbivores. So I
Yes.
don't know if
Hmm.
we can necessarily
And then you have things like
typify it to.
cephalopods, and
Oh yeah.
cephalopods are not only are they solitary, but they're also semiparous, so they die before they have the chance to pass on anything they've learned to the next generation. So there's no capacity for social learning, and yet
Hmm.
they are some of the most intelligent invertebrates. So weird
Yeah.
stuff.
Oh, they're very, very weird little critters, and that is great for them. Just looking at where are the temperate rainforests on your world? Well, what is this? Oh yeah, that was one where I was making all my notes. Just for people who are interested, this is what I was doing as I was going through and like measuring all of the different climate, all of the different temperature stuff. And you'll get to see that live in a couple weeks. So, where are the temperate rainforests? Um, I mean, you would probably let's pick a good rainforest color. I think I was drawing something green, so that's why all my colors are green. I mean, you probably find a lot of them in here. Um, you know, we've got a CF region that's on the water. We've got high elevation here, so there will probably be a lot of that at higher altitudes. Um, this area is probably going to get peeled back to a degree. There's probably going to be more monsoon area in here, but you would find temperate rainforests at elevation in these areas. Um, Similarly, you'd find them at elevation over here. Uh, there's going to be a temperate rainforest on the south side of Arukia, And then where would the other temperate rainforest be? Don't open that file. There we go. When we go to Zaalea, the little griffin parade is kind of blocking the temperate rainforests would be at altitude in this region and over here, and then we probably find some in here as well. And as temperate rainforests, they would probably resemble more like some areas of like the Appalachians, for example, where you can have like very high rainfall in there, more than like, I don't know, higher altitude things like, I don't know, on the West Coast. Like, you know, we have rainforests, temperate rainforests in BC, and there used to be more in, I guess, Europe, particularly in like Ireland and, you know, the British Isles and stuff. But those got kind of torn away. We don't usually, I mean, we may see some over here in the Tyche Basin. But one reason why you wouldn't necessarily see it on the west coast of the Bissaran supercontinent, so over in Zaalea, is just because of the ice sheets and how cold things are, and the way that the way that the pressure changes, and the way that the pressure systems have changed in response to the changes in temperature at different latitudes. There are probably some islands in the Aphrodite that would have some of those rainforests, but you know, it takes a decent amount of precipitation in order to make that happen on Dove. It would be a much more localized thing, like, you know, where we see it in the Appalachians. All right, so we are got the sanguine griffins. I guess these could be early. These could be arboreal sanguine griffins.
Now, I'm wondering about their foot structure, because the most common solution is to just use claws that can just grip onto, you know, trees. You know, something, you know, retractable claws are an option for something that is spending some time on the trees and some time on the ground, but something that's living pretty much permanently in trees, they don't really need to be retracted. So you can have something more like, you know, the claws of an opossum or something. Whereas the alternative would be to have proper like grasping hands in the same way as primates. And
Yeah, so I think I was imagining those grasping hands with essentially two thumbs on with essentially two thumbs and then three fingers. That is kind of what I drew in here, and we can see and I, you know, imagined it transitioning to knuckle walking in the terrestrial ones, where they kind of fold up their two thumbs up here, and then they have their 3 digits as I guess the platform to support themselves. And here's the side view.
I remember this now. I'd forgotten about this, but yeah, that's very good.
Excellent. I also find it uncanny, and I think that's quite fun. You know, primates have one thumb. Check these ones out. They've got two thumbs.
People love to go on and on about how great opposable thumbs are. Well, these things have got 2 opposable thumbs.
Exactly. And I do have there this on the sides here. Did I flatten that down? No, I did not. On the sides here, so they have their mandible kind of coming out, and then because we do have this sort of like rhynchocephalian pseudobeak structure on the bottom, right? And kind of how that works is like, we have the top, the top of the pseudobeak. Now that I'm drawing, here we go. We have the top of the pseudobeak, which is kind of like a fused, two teeth that are kind of fused together. And then the bottom is two separate teeth that are kind of like coming up. That's not great, but like two separate teeth coming up. And in order to have this kind of like, and so like we have like these two, like the jaw kind of has these two tusks essentially kind of like forming this beak structure for all of the rose griffins. And something I was thinking of is that, the I guess the mouth proper would kind of recede back. So if we got like the head here, what do they look like? And then they have their crest here. But like the mouth would essentially recede back, and then they'd have their front fused teeth into this structure kind of coming out. And then along here, they just kind of like they have like their mandible with, their tusk, and they use their tusks and their top fused pseudobeak structure to like hunt and grasp prey. To kind of, so like their mouth is actually like is actually receding, at least on the top, and their tooth is kind of extending out.
Yeah.
Which feels like it's probably forming a more like keratinized beak structure at that point. So these ones may now have proper beaks on the top.
It reminds me a little bit of hippos.
Excellent.
Well, it reminds me of the lower jaw of hippos, because they have, you wouldn't know it from looking at their, looking at them when they're alive with skin and everything, but the bottom jaw has these really prominent tusks that kind of jut forward, and the actual jaw line is actually much further back than you would expect.
Excellent. Yeah, that's definitely what I'm going for. So yeah, more of like a hippo structure for the lower jaw. Excellent. Let's see how quickly I can make a little cartoon hippo. That looks pretty good.
Yeah, it's pretty solid.
There we go. What do we got? Hippo skulls are so surprising when you first see one. Yeah, I think the first time I saw a hippo skull in a context that made me go, oh, like, that is exceptionally strange, was the project, I think it is Kozman, where like shrink wrapping
Yeah.
Where like the hippo is shrink wrapped, like a lot of like earlier I guess paleo art of dinosaurs or whatever, and like the the skulls on those just look terrifying.
They do. They look like some kind of horrible, like, hell beast.
Yes.
Yeah, that
So we can
was one of the ones in All Yesterdays.
all
Um,
yesterdays. Yes, yes, yes.
yeah.
There we go. What was that? Yeah, yeah. Oh, that's fun. Here, yes. Look at that. That is excellent for our knife-faced baboons.
Mm.
Oh yeah, that is a mandrill. Cool.
Uh,
I love the brushwork on that. That's very nice.
I have my copy in the other room.
What time is it? Oh, we're about halfway through. Um,
Oh,
how much coffee do I have left? Ah, I'm down to the last of my coffee. How are you for tea?
yep, I'm done for.
You're done for? All right. Well, let's go get a refill. And as is tradition, we're going to take this time to venerate the great green dragon, whose body is the earth beneath our feet, and whose golden tail is the sun. You can praise the dragon as you see fit, though some of you, I believe, are having been experiencing an overabundance of
Yes.
the great green dragon's
Yeah.
loving rays. Um, so you may ask kindly for the dragon to shade you with its bountiful wings from which the rains fall. There we go. Excellent. Um, we can continue to construct this cosmology
Yeah.
offhand and improvise a religious tradition and understanding of the world.
I am very lucky. Well, in this particular instance, usually I don't like it, but the plateau of Ling is surrounded by a constant swirling maelstrom of cold, so I have not been experiencing very much heat.
Mm,
Um, but to those who are suffering the effects of the heat wave, I hope you get through it okay.
yeah, we had the 5th anniversary of a heat wave in the Pacific Northwest that happened in 2021, where we saw temperatures that were 10 degrees higher than usual. So like than usual highs. So here it was like 39 to 40 degrees Celsius. And like
Mm.
it was hot last week and it was like 27 degrees. So we experienced a pretty significant um, anomaly. But like there were places in the interior of BC that had, I think Lytton has like cracked a record for its latitude and got like 49 degrees Celsius,
Yikes.
which was quite brutal. And we've had a bunch of memorials and commemorations for the over like 600 people who passed away during that. Um, and we are still learning about the ecological impacts of the heat wave, like
Mm.
trees split. There was a huge loss of intertidal life because it to occur during a period in like the tidal cycle that month when it was very low. So we lost a lot of tidal life, and we're still learning about how our ecosystems in the region were responding, and some of them are still slowly collapsing from that. Um, but yeah, so I hope everybody is able to keep cool. Uh, Consistently 30 degrees. Yeah, no, that is quite brutal.
Mm.
Stay at least a reasonable temperature. Yeah, that's good. Back to the dragon. Wings were the sky, but the wings being clouds make sense too. Yeah. The sky's the sky. I mean, not everything has to be a part of the dragon. What did I say in Boston? Yeah, 35. Yes, that can be quite brutal, and I guess especially out east. For those of you who don't live in like the eastern North America, like it gets exceptionally humid as well. So it can be like 35 degrees, and it just you walk outside and you feel like you've already been sweating for an hour. I find that to be incredibly miserable. The dry heat out here is much more suitable to my general comfort. But yeah, let's go praise the sun, and we will be right back.
Mm-hmm.
And we are back. Jake is recounting that didn't have an aircon in Korea during the big heat wave in Seoul, at least, but it was sub-basement, so it didn't get too much direct heating. Yeah. Luckily, I think half of our apartment is kind of like in the ground. So, and then like, we have one floor. It's just part of the floor is, level. And then there's a bit of a hill that kind of rises up. So we end up being slightly buried. So it ends up being a bit cooler.
I am much, much more sensitive to cold than I am to heat. So I have a very high heat tolerance, thankfully. Which makes me wonder how I ended up so far north, but
I have a much better cold tolerance. I'm, I like it cold. And then I also, I don't know, my mom's British and we have like we'll just put another sweater on. Like,
when I met CM Kuzumin for the first time, it was in Istanbul, and it was in the middle of summer, and it was something like, I don't know, 37, 38 degrees, something like that. And we arranged for a place to meet, and we both met up, and we were both wearing sweaters. And so the first thing that we both said, the Spider-Man meme where they're both pointing at each other, we both did that. Aren't you hot in that? We just said that simultaneously, but no, we apparently both have very high heat tolerances.
Something about people who do Spec Evo and their heat tolerances. And something else that I was thinking about, like if they're using their mandibles here to kind of I was making it a little thicker than I wanted. Yeah, they're using their beaks and their lower mandibles and tusks to kind of grab prey. I was thinking that their hands, having those thumbs, being able to kind of grasp and pick up things, would also be helpful for actually like delivering food into their mouths. And that was something I was thinking of for these ones as well, because at one point I was considering them having hooves. Like, they could change their hand structure into a more hoof-like structure. But then, if they have these very large, and maybe these are a bit too large, but if they had these very large lower tusks that they're using to dispatch their prey, getting the food into their mouths, it would be helpful if they had hands to kind of like rip off pieces of meat and, insert it between their tusks into their jaws. And I mean, they do have, I think they do have like spaces for chewing and stuff in here, but it is much smaller than other gryphons, right? Like if we look at even like one of these, where's another griffin? Here we go. Like if we look at one of these griffins, right? Like their jaws where they can actually like have teeth for macerating and like processing food is quite large compared to the area of their jaws that are used for, dispatching prey and slicing and those sorts of things.
It reminds me a bit of black skimmers, the birds that they skim. They fly along the surface of the water and would dip their beaks in as they swim, and they just snatch up things out of the water. And the lower the lower part of the beak is significantly longer than the upper part, and so they've got this weird kind of jutting out underbite.
Oh, okay. No, I'm gonna go look that up in a sec. What are these called? Skimmers?
Black skimmer. If you type in
Black
black
skimmers.
skimmer beak, it should show you.
Ooh, like a look at this. Just from the little thumbnail there.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. I like that a lot.
Yeah.
I don't think I've
I mean, in
shifted
their
these.
case, it's because they're skimming through the water, so it would be a very different ecological pressure
Yeah.
motivating the that morphology, but still same basic look.
There we go. Yeah, yeah. Okay. So it doesn't look as absurd. No, that's not what I wanted. It doesn't look as absurd as I thought it did. Because if I look at this one, yeah, that's fine.
Mm.
That may be a bit long, but I wasn't really measuring
Yeah,
how
I
long it would have
mean,
to be.
there's always sexual selection.
There is always sexual selection, which is the other thing I
Yeah.
wanted to talk about with the sanguine griffins in a sec. But we've got some. What are folks saying? Used to wear jumpers when it was much too warm. Yeah, that happens sometimes.
I
I,
cannot
I,
remember the last time I wore less than 3 layers, so I am just permanently cold for whatever reason.
yeah. I mean, I just out of habit, I tend to have a t-shirt on, and then I wear like when I go out, I wear either like a hoodie or a shirt or a sweater or something, and then I always have um, some sort of jacket on top. Uh, and I don't know, like even when it's hot out, I like to have a jacket on to protect my skin from the sun and stuff like that. Um, you were a marching band in high school, practiced in the summer every day, and wore a full hoodie. Saying dysphoria was part of it, but was still an egg. Aw. Well, that can be a part of it too. Yeah. But no, I tend to wear some sort of hoodie, even in the summer. I have like thinner hoodies and things to wear just to sort of protect my arms. I don't like wearing sunscreen, so I wear additional layers instead.
Mm.
Just something about the feeling of it, of putting it on and it being kind of like oily or something. Yes, so we want to talk about sexual selection and social structures.
Mm.
Um, for the arboreal griffins, I'm not. Uh, oh, their faces are at a very weird angle here. That's better. There we go. For these arboreal griffins that are, solitary but social, um, I imagine they have like each individual has like their own territory that they're kind of hunting in, um, and they form a bit of like a patchwork.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and there are probably going to be um, male and female individuals um, providing buffer zones between them. So, like, you rarely would you have uh, to male individuals having territories that are next to one another because they don't tolerate competition very well. They would probably be interspersed by um, uh, female individuals, though then this would probably create kind of, yeah, like a patchwork, kind of system. And there may even be buffer zones, because where like no individual kind of lives in that area because um maybe, because they don't kind of like tolerate somebody living too close to them if there isn't enough space. But then those buffer zones could become new territories for juveniles that are kind of like,
Yeah.
moving out to establish themselves. So you constantly have this like shifting patchwork of territories is kind of what I was feeling for these ones.
Cool.
Um, um, and then for the sanguine griffins, which they could have common areas and social lives, but hunting individually almost always, or is that too social? I'm imagining that they are like often solitary and hunting solitary, though they could still have relationships with their neighbors. Though adults of the same sex would probably be less inclined to socialize. They would probably be competing with one another. So what we could see is, an older male individual could have social relations with like juvenile males that are nearby. It could like interact with them. It would interact with female individuals that have their territories nearby. Likewise, an older female individual would probably socialize with younger female individuals and then a broader range of male individuals. But like, if you have two sexually mature like adult female individuals, they probably wouldn't socialize all that much with one another because they would be competing and they would probably want to kind of, make sure that they establish their own territories. But yeah, there'll probably be places where they intersect and interact with one another. I mean, I can also think of like, if they're for the ones that are hunting dragons, like if there is a union of blue dragons that arrives in a metamorphora tree that kind of like intersects several territories, all of those individuals, regardless of their age and sex, would probably come together and hunt in the same area. And, they would be social and they would kind of tolerate each other because there's enough food in that environment for them to hunt. I'm thinking about bears, right? Like bears are usually quite solitary, but when there are salmon runs, a bunch of bears, which normally, don't interact or tolerate each other, will come together on this river where their territories kind of like overlap or intersect, and they will all fish together and interact and socialize and things.
It's kind of similar to what Komodo dragons do, where they are solitary, but they have been known to sort of form not exactly packs, but they kind of gang up on a single large prey item and kind of work together to take it down. But the moment that the prey is dead, they compete furiously over the food. Like any semblance of cooperation just immediately breaks down. So Or
That could
actually, it's kind
be
of similar to Madagascar and Fusa as well, where they do occasionally form packs to hunt large prey, but for the most part, they're solitary.
um uh is Fusa with a U or an O? I keep
Oh,
forgetting.
it's Fossa.
Yeah, okay. Um okay, yeah. I just want to get this down, and I'm okay. So, and this gives the idea as well that when they become, this is a good prompt here, soup crime. So, like when they come down from the trees, if they are socializing and tolerating one another, when there's enough prey in the environment to kind of facilitate larger populations, being when they come to the crowns and resources are more dispersed and they have to start working together to take down prey, they start forming this mobbing behavior of like Komodo dragons or Fusa. um, and you know for some of these sanguine griffins that are more solitary, I'm thinking that we could have a kind of spectrum of ones that are much more social and have like more defined social structures, and then those that are more, more solitary, something, you know, like I mean, there's certain. I mean, hyenas are a good example of this
Uh-huh.
because there are more solitary hyenas. They're much more social hyenas. We can also think of critters like coyotes or foxes or whatever as well, right? Like more solitary meso carnivores. They could gang up um, to hunt prey, and then yes, be very competitive after the fact. But the ones that are the most successful in the sort of Zaalean savanna are the ones that decided after they'd hunted the prey to not viciously compete over the carcass.
Yes.
And hello, Goody Rictus. Welcome back. Good to see you. Yeah, so I think that is, kind of like working very well here. And part of that could be developing that social structure and developing that, for lack of a better term at the moment, like that picking order
Yeah.
that we can kind of see. We could, kind of follow this hyena route in superficially and say that, this structure is dominated by, like adult female sanguine griffins, because it is, the female hyenas that are
Hmm.
more socially dominant in spotted hyenas at the very least. But that is in spirit. But that is superficial. That is not in spirit. If we did it in spirit, then these could be a group where it is the male griffins that are the more dominant ones, because the male griffins are the ones with the brood pouches. And
Mm.
what is interesting about hyenas is that it is the gestating sex, which is the one that is more socially dominant in their kind of like political organization. I mean, they do have politics, which is interesting, like in their organization. So for sanguine griffins, if we kind of like follow that logic of the hyena, it would be the male sanguine griffins, which are doing the gestating, that are more socially dominant. So I think that could be sort of an interesting turn, because for many of the other groups that we've kind of looked at, whoa, here we go. For many of the groups that we've looked at, I mean, for the Ver griffins, they have female griffins with harems of male griffins, right? So, and the orange griffins, especially the courant griffins that do have, I guess, pack behavior, but these packs are like just very simple families, are more, I guess they're more monogamous. I mean, it's just the parents that are dominant in the group, and they tend to be less sexually dimorphic. Haven't really talked about the Tene or Tene griffins as much in that. I think for we have talked about the lecking. So
Yeah.
in these Ver griffins, I mean, it is the female griffins that are doing the lecking behavior, which is again a reversal of what we would normally expect from mammals and things like that. When we were talking about the Goulet griffins, we were talking about how they have these like what was it, tyrant queens that are running things. Oh no, and then no. What were we doing for that? I think we had. Here we go.
So they start out monogamous because that's just a fundamental prerequisite for eusociality.
Yeah, and then we have we have tyrants and we have backup tyrants. And yeah, I think we have like sort of couples there with various backups and things. So that is a bit more complex because they come from a more monogamous set. But we haven't had an explicit group yet where it is the male griffins engaging in that, where it is the male griffins who are engaging in that socially dominant behavior. So I think in the terrestrial sanguine griffins, that would be interesting. That they sort of like take that role. And I think now following the hyena, I think that's a good sort of model to, that's sort of a good model, because if they're forming their social structures and they're forming them based on the relation to the individual who is gestating them, then in this case, because of the brood pouches, that would be the male griffin. Yes. So
yeah,
if there were sapient griffin societies, and I don't think there will be, that is not something that we're going to be looking at, but if there were, if there was spec Evo, where Dovians in the world were speculating about hypothetical sapient griffin societies, patrilineal and matrilineal would mean very different things.
Yes. Because it's just now occurring to me that both hyenas and Fusa have this thing with the masculinized females,
Mm-hmm.
where they have female dominance, and they are related. They're both within
They're felines, right?
Herpestidae.
Oh yeah, yeah.
No,
Okay.
they are. Yeah, they're within feliform carnivorans, but
Feliformate.
they're
Yeah.
not. Yeah, but they're not felids themselves.
Okay.
But it's interesting because they must have evolved that social system independently of each other, because both of, well, at least I haven't done any proper research about this, so I could be wrong, but older varieties of hyenas were primarily solitary, and so
Mm-hmm.
the spotted hyena must have developed this masculinized female thing as the social system was developing, which means that it can't be like a homologous trait with the Fusa, because they would have evolved from mongoose that rafted over from Africa, which would have had a more typically monogamous social structure. So I
Mm-hmm.
guess that's a weird one. I guess they might have inherited some sort of like very early social behavior that kind of predisposed them to the masculinized female thing, but they actually developed it independently of each other. That's I might have to look into that. It's kind of weird.
And what's also interesting is that um, there's a research into the social structure of feral cats, and feral cats have been found to form matrilineal cat colonies.
Oh.
So it's not the first time that it's happened in this broader structure where you have like a more solitary animal shifting to this kind of like uh female dominant structure to use,
Yeah.
yeah, so it is interesting.
Hmm.
um but I mean, this would be more patterned on matrilineal structure.
Hmm. I mean, there are a lot of things about the situation with hyenas that we still don't really know. Like,
Yeah.
at least when I last checked, there's still no consensus on how and why the female hyena evolved the pseudophallus that they have, because it seems like a very hefty disadvantage in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I mean, that's a well, and yeah, and that's actually because like I guess the griffins by and large, because they have ovipositors which would essentially be functioning as kind of like a pseudophallus to kind of deposit eggs
Mhm.
into the brood pouch of the male griffins. So I guess they would also have this, very, I guess their basic structure is essentially more hyena-esque, that we are familiar with.
Mm.
Um, that's, yeah, very, okay. Um, uh,
Well, with that, in that case, that still makes like having an ovipositor to deliver eggs into a brood pouch. That makes
that
sense.
that's
Whereas with a
true.
hyena, it's like a very high proportion of young are stillborn because they're just not able to actually like pass through the birth canal.
Yeah,
So it seems like a
that's
really
interesting.
bad idea, and yet somehow it hasn't been selected against yet.
Well, and they're able to contend with a bunch of other carnivores
Mm.
on the
They are
savannah that,
the most common and successful large carnivorous mammals in Africa.
yeah, well, efficiency.
Mm.
um yeah, I don't think that the male griffins, sanguine griffins, are going to develop a pseudo ovipositor. um I think that what we can, what I was thinking in this case is that the tendency to cooperate is passed through um, the young, I guess, sticking around their father. And, if the father is, teaching the young how to hunt and then is having more young while the juveniles are still kicking around, you can kind of create a situation where they are, cooperating, creating more of like this eusocial system. Um,
Yeah.
and then there are also the female griffins who are mating with the male griffins are then like joining this social structure. So you can get
Mhm.
something that is then that's quite complex.
Yeah.
Um,
So you'd
that
have transient females that
yeah, the females
attach
leave.
themselves to
Yeah, 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 yeah,
yeah. The females would be the dispersers, yeah.
yeah. Hmm.
Which makes sense because very generally speaking, female dispersal is more is pretty strongly correlated with monogamous breeding systems or systems where the burden of reproduction is more equal between males and females, which is what this male brood pouch kind of necessarily does.
Yeah.
So that might be a pretty general tendency across a lot of these different forms.
Yeah, I mean, even with the Ver Griffins, there is the female griffins would be dispersing,
Mm.
um, because they have. But in that system, there is a dominant female triple Ver Griffin, which I guess is operating a similar way to like a stallion or maybe like a macho for like llamas or whatever, where they're like, controlling they're kind of like, yeah, controlling um again, like a matrilineal group more or less. Uh and then I guess you'd have like bachelorette Ver Griffin um herds that are trying to peel them off. Yeah, yeah. So like we see that pattern in different ways. It's just in this situation, it's formed a very particular structure that has helped them thrive on the savannah. And I guess in this starting around this 25 million year mark, they are going to be the more dominant group of carnivores,
Yeah.
and the they are going to be out competing the courant griffins
Mhm.
pretty significantly. They'll probably um, push them to more marginal habitats in many ways. Though, I mean, I think what's going to be distinct probably is probably their strategies for hunting, because
Mhm.
the
Mhm.
courant griffins are like, these pursuit predators that are chasing and herding, and then like, they're chasing the animals, they're controlling the herd, and then they are picking one out and taking it down. I imagine the sanguine griffins have a different style of hunting and pack behavior. Um, and the reason why I'm been thinking about the Courant Griffins like hunting style is that this is what this is what many of the groups of the ancient ancestral Zaaleans are doing when they are herding groups of Ver Griffins into kill zones. And the Courant Griffins are like, oh well, we can do that. And I think they also have yeah, we were talking last week where they're going to have this sort of like consensus behavior, for hunting and things like that. That the Dovians, the ancestral Zaaleans, are going to be able to recognize and you know play off of because they're in the
Mm.
same because they're in the same environment. Um, and I guess both of them will then need to work together in order to stave off being outcompeted by the sanguine gryphons. Is there Dovian seaweed? Aha, there is Dovian seaweed, and I'm going to talk. Well, it is, but it's cute, and you'll see what I mean in the flora video.
Mm.
Um, left gill snack, watermelon with chamomile. Ooh. Do you have any particular summer snacks? Like personally, do we have summer snacks? Um, do you have a preferred summer snack, Bib?
I'm not really much of a snacky person.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I am just, when in doubt, sandwiches. 'Cause I am a big fan, a big proponent of the concept of sandwiches. So that's where my mind immediately goes.
Summer sandwiches. I am a big cheese and crackers person.
Oh,
Um,
very good. Yeah.
so my summer plate would probably include, yeah, things like watermelon, fruit slices like apples and stuff like that too. I think watermelon's a fruit. Yeah, so fruit slices would be included um, with the cheese and crackers. I usually more, yeah, because in the winter I'm usually like, I will have pickled stuff and have jams and things like that. But in the summer, it's more like fresh fruit and vegetables and herbs and things from the garden and whatnot.
Hmm. Yeah. I'm a big fan of cheese in general. Cheese and
Mm-hmm.
crackers are nice. Either brie or Wensleydale with
Mm.
some very nice.
Yeah, and I think in the winter, I'm definitely more of a hard cheese person. Uh, in the summer, I'm a big fan of. I make my own paneer out of like sheep or
Oh,
goat's milk. Um, I also have bries. Uh, what are they called offhand? Like there's this little like spreadable goat cheeses that they have from the store, usually with herbs and things. I like those. Zaalean summer snacks. Oh, um, well, Zaalean summer snacks. I think the would probably involve a lot of metamorphora fruits that are ripening during the summer, because the plants would be storing. Oh no, during the summer. What's going on in the summer? The summer for a lot of Zaalea would be the wet season. The early wet season would be a particularly hard time for the ancient ancestral Zaaleans. Um, and that's usually because for hunter gatherers and foragers, they tend to be very productive and gather a lot of foods in the dry season because you have like nuts and fruits and things like that tend to be, emerging in the dry season. The wet season seems to be when the plants are like storing up a lot of energy and whatnot and growing and things like that. Um, so whatever they can get their hands on. But later in the wet season, I mean, there's going to be a lot of fresh greens that are available. Um, I haven't talked about it yet. It's going to come out in the next episode, but metamorphora filaments would be something that they would eat. Um, a lot
yeah.
of young animals would probably be being born. So, going after hunting juveniles would probably be what they're up to.
Could they make cheese out of suciform milk?
That is why I want milk. There has to be cheese. So there have to be milks. And the the mouth milk, um, the salivilk, one of the derivations that we were coming up with, um, would be good for cheese. And in my own research for cheese making, um, the milks that tend to be best for making cheese tend to come from uh, herbivorous animals, and it is because of um, proteins and various things that are created as a byproduct of processing their diets. So if we have, primarily like grazing and low browsing herbivores eating plants that are, chemically similar or like identical to our plants, there's a good chance they're going to be producing milks that we could turn into cheese. Because you could, I mean, if you got enough of it, turn like pigeon crop milk into cheese. It's already kind of chunky. I think it's kind of cottage cheesy in consistency to begin with. You consider eating baboon though. Yeah, I'm sure Devians would get a kick out of nabbing one of the sanguine griffins. Dove is on the whole very cute. Yeah, I don't know. I think that's just the way it kind of turned out from the art style. I'm pretty happy with how cute all of the animals are. I think when David sees an animal and he's like, "Can I ride it?" And I was like, "Excellent. David wants to ride all the animals." Um,
I don't think he'd want to ride any of my animals.
I think they activate a lot of people's spidey sense.
Yeah, I have learned that.
Jake. Yes, mouth cheese. I had an image of you making cheese with carnivore milk for a second. I assume you mean research from other sources. Yes, research from other sources. Um, hey, Writer 2. Welcome, welcome. You have arrived at the twilight of the stream. I think we still have a little bit to do, but yeah, carnivore and milk doesn't tend to be very good for cheese making on a bit of like a chemical level, because I think like people have been investigating making milk out of other sources. I mean, there are some kinds of milks that are very nutritious, but like the other part of cheese making too is that you need enough of it in order to produce cheese.
You like tiger milk, Jake?
Tiger milk, is that something that is like regularly? Uh-oh. There we go. I don't know how you would get. How does one milk a tiger?
That sounds like quite a dangerous process.
Yeah. Um. So yeah, we have these forms, and we've been able to develop them out. We are going to have. Oh, and they've got. I gave them little crests, ear sort of thingies too. I think they're more crests. And on the male one here, we can see the crests are a bit more developed. I think the tusks can probably be longer as well. These are sanguine griffins, so they are going to have more like a bloody red scale color, which I think is interesting. A lot of the brood pouches for male griffins of other groups are usually more muted. They're usually was it like counter shaded, I suppose, like they're just lighter on the bottom. Tiger nut milk. There we go. Tiger nuts are, yeah. The nut milks are quite interesting. There's a kind of, as an aside, there is a you can make, using bulgur, a like cheese-like product by like putting bulgur into water and then just like stirring it every day for a few weeks and leaving it on the counter. You'll start to develop these like funky flavors in it. Then you can kind of blend it up, form it into balls, and then submerge it in olive oil, and you'll get this like spreadable wheat-based cheese thing. Something they do in I believe North Africa is largely where that kind of bulgur product is made. I forget the name of it offhand. All right, so we can have. Did I flatten that? I did flatten that. Let's make some of this a little smaller so we can add that in. There we go. Whoop. All right, so yeah, and the bright brood pouches too is something I was thinking about from baboons, you know, because they can have either bright faces or bright back ends.
Yeah, baboon, hyena, crocodiles with knife faces.
Yeah, fermented tofus. Tempeh is really good. I quite enjoy tempeh. There's a soy. There is another like fermented soy product that is not for me. I've had it before. It has like the consistency of snot. Natto.
Yum.
There we go. I cannot do natto. It's just the flavor I think is fine, but like the texture is not good.
I have a very strong aversion to anything that is, you know, solid food. I like liquids to drink. I like, but the more you sort of get into the halfway between those two things, something like yogurt or like even cream cheese, that sort of, if I can't bite down into something firm, then I find that incredibly off-putting.
Try Oncom. What is Oncom? I'm going to look that up. You have tempeh a couple times a week. That, I mean,
Wow.
I would too. It is quite tasty. If I could make my own tempeh, I would really enjoy that. Not news. What is Oncom? Ooh, that looks tasty. Ah, Sudanese. Red and black Oncom. Related to tempeh. Okay, cool. Yes. Yeah, no, I'm big fan. I in theory, I have not had it, but if it is similar to tempeh, then I assume that I would like it a lot. But yeah, I don't know if I just bite into cream cheese. Usually that's why it's on bagels or something like that.
Yeah, if it can be spread on something that has some degree of firmness to it, then it's totally fine. But something like yogurt, I absolutely cannot stand. I don't know how anyone eats it.
I am a big fan of yogurt. I usually use it as like a substitute for like milk or something in like a cereal.
Oh, mm,
Yeah, I'm sorry.
it's. I mean, even the name, like, it's got to be one of the worst words in English. Just regardless of how you pronounce it, yogurt or yogurt is both just like in Turkish, it's yogurt, which isn't great, but it's better than yogurt. That sounds like onomatopoeia for the sound of vomiting.
I also was thinking about your mentioning of Komodo dragons, and I think it'd be interesting if we had one of these groups, maybe one that wasn't arboreal, becoming kind of like
Mm,
a badgerish mesocarnivore. Because like we do have the gryphons that lek and stuff who have more of that like digging um uh like what I described originally as like a badgerish digging burrowing lifestyle, but they are adapted more so for eating um bones and hard shelled invertebrates and those sorts of things. Probably omnivorous too, eating roots and stuff like that. Um, Maybe cracking open like nuts and stuff, so they have like a broader diet. But like
mm,
having a Komodo dragon esque griffin would also be
yeah.
quite fun. Um, so just kind of, and they can be sort of. I mean, I don't know if they'd be sanguine griffins, but I mean they could be. People may group them as sanguine griffins because they're working from the same body plan, right? So they could kind of go on a similar path, um, where they decide that's not as white as I want it to be. There we go. They could go on a very similar path in, how they develop their tusks from
Mm.
these mandibles. Um, from your talking about contingency. um, so, we could have a very similar. They're looking a bit cuter than I anticipated. Um, Very cute, knife-faced Komodo dragons. And then, having their kind of robust arms here
Mm.
and, more clawed limbs. I guess this is kind of closer to kind of what a crocodiliform body plan that these guys are going to have.
Mm.
And then what they have like those kind of like swinging legs, and in a way like these ones would have a more sprawled posture too, because when I think about like a more badgery thing as well, they're more um sprawled out. That may just be my own like bias from looking at them from how I think they appear.
Mm. I mean, they definitely have a more not necessarily sprawling, but their legs are more positioned more widely apart than other mammals. That's for sure.
Show me it from the front. Yeah, here. Yeah, they are more widely positioned. Yeah. Not like actually sprawled out like a Komodo dragon
Mhm.
or a crocodile, but closer. Mm. And then have their long tails, though it's probably not going to be as... they can have shorter tails just because they're going to be burrowing a lot. And it can be a little closer to the ground. They're not really relying on it for like a counterbalance because of how powerfully built or robust they are. Well, there we go. And they can be, more, I guess, heavily armored. Relative to, other creatures, I suppose, that are mesocarnivores, just because they're close to the ground.
Yeah.
And I'm sure some black dragons or a green dragon would think of these as snacks.
Yeah, exactly. If they're living in an ecosystem where you've got, dragons and night-faced baboons and all sorts of other things running around, you probably want some way of keeping yourself safe when you're out of your burrow.
Yes. These are the cutest Komodo dragons. There we go. And where would no, because their nostrils would actually be up here, actually.
Yeah, there would be back towards. Yeah.
There we go. There's the nostril. They have an ear thing.
You might even get some kind of... I'm reminded of the fact that humans and I believe some closely related great apes like chimpanzees, because in primates the snout has become so reduced, so that like hominids have these really bizarrely flat faces because our jaws have retreated so much. That process has actually deformed the sinuses, so that because there's a special canal in the sinuses that when mucus builds up, it can just drain out immediately. But in hominids, the basin that the mucus collects in has been pushed up and in, so that the canal to drain out the mucus is now higher than the inlet. So that means that, which is why humans are one of the only animals that when we get a cold, we get properly congested because of the deformation of the sinuses. So in the process of evolving these crazy beak things, the tooth beaks, maybe these things have some kind of weirdly shaped sinuses as well.
Yeah, I kind of like extended like a nose up here, kind of on either side, I suppose, like their nostrils being a bit higher.
Yeah. Which actually, that would be kind of a pre-adaptation for any of the aquatic forms, because their nostrils are already positioned quite well to become some sort of, just so that they can emerge above the water while the rest of the body is submerged.
Oh my goodness, yes, and we haven't talked about the aquatic forms yet. That was one thing that I was interested in. I didn't think we'd really have time for, but yeah, no, now we have a morph from the tiny little rose gryphons, which are going to be, like the rodent and lizard analogs, and I guess the knife-faced, and then we got the knife-faced baboons. Now they could also, between the 50 and 25 million year mark, become the these large marine carnivores like
Mhm.
whatchamacallits, like yeah, cetaceans and stuff like that. Excellent, excellent. As I did not know where we were going to get those from, but now we are cooking.
Mhm.
Yeah, so crawling on rocks and stuff, and then they become like more robust. Would we call Komodo dragons mesocarnivores? I guess in their environment, they're
I
like apex predators, but
Yeah, I would. I think they're hypercarnivores.
okay, yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay. More robust hypercarnivores, you know. All right, and then from that, how long did it take whales and such to shift from terrestrial to like, you know, these fully marine lifestyles? Was about
Pretty quick, because in the aftermath of the KPG extinction, all of the marine reptiles were gone, and so it didn't take that long for some of the first, like Ambulocetus was like 50 million years ago, or something like that. So they were already, yeah, 48 or 47 million years ago. We already had the first aquatic, at least, or semi-aquatic forms, and then it wasn't too long after that, within the next 5-10 million years. So
yeah, okay, cool. All right, so yeah, if they emerge about, you know, if this group kind of starts to populate around that I don't know, what is it, around that 50 million year point, and you know, some of them are living in littoral environments, we can start to see that shift and crossover. And within that 50 million year period, we could totally get, yes, excellent,
yeah,
excellent. Okay. Uh, littoral. Yeah. So we're going to have littoral populations, and they can, you know, their bodies look pretty good for swimming. Um, Komodo dragons swim. Yeah, like they're on a bunch of different islands. They're on Komodo, and they're on a few others in that area.
monitor lizards in general, they're definitely capable of aquatic life. Yeah. And so I'm thinking that in terms of the style of swimming, they'd probably um, just going with the sort of crocodilian model. I would imagine that they would probably be side to side swimmers
Yep.
opposed to up and down swimmers like cetaceans. So that
Yep.
means if which they probably would, evolve a tail fluke, um, but it would be a vertical one like a shark's tail as opposed to a horizontal one like a whale.
Excellent. All right, and then we're all right. Well, let's try. Ooh, what do we have? Speaking of large aquatic carnivores, orc of the Pacific Northwest coast occasionally prey on moose of all things. Yeah, because like the moose try and swim between islands and stuff like that, and So do like deer and other things. So
Hmm.
they can pick a moose out.
Yeah.
And Jake is Jake won't hear a word against yogurt.
Um,
More time to make my own yogurt at home. Yeah, my mother-in-law makes her own yogurt on the countertop, and that's something I really want to do at some point. I think
it's just
we don't have like good insulation in BC around where I live because it's very mild. Like usually, historically, it has been quite mild, like much of
mm,
Europe. So they don't care about insulation or air conditioning or anything like that. Um, which means that, you know, overnight and things, it can just get quite cold and it can like disrupt a culture. You can't really keep it at a good temperature. I'd have to get one of those like yogurt makers that like, you know, stay at like a consistent temperature, which kind of ruins the rustic charm to me of like, you know, making your own fermented foods.
see you tomorrow, Jake.
I thought it was Tuesday.
Tomorrow we're going to be on Languages of Pillar World.
Oh,
So
yes, yes,
yes,
yes.
I'm
Pillar
actually
World with
streaming
Madeline.
3 days in a row. Today is day number
Wow.
1.
That's commitment. All right, so we're going to let's look at I want to just check very quickly. What were the name of the whatchamacallits? Marine crocs. What were they called?
The Thalattoseuchians is the wider group.
Let's look at come on.
Thalatto with
No,
two
no, 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 no,
T's.
no. There we go.
There we go.
Okay. Yeah, I don't really know what I was expecting. Because this is I think I expected something different than what I imagined, which was a crocodile with flippers and a shark tail fluke,
Yeah, that's
which is
pretty
what we
much what you
got.
got. Yeah.
There's only so much we can do with
Hmm.
marine critters.
Yeah,
I
like
find
I
it,
said in my SpecCon talk, I have this
yeah,
vendetta against fish because no matter what you do, fish will always just happen, and there's only so many ways you can make an aquatic thing that doesn't look like a fish.
all right. Well, let's try to make this. What is it? So you've got your head. You've
Mm.
got this kind of like. I mean, that's kind of exaggerated, but not really.
I'm thinking about how the beak might change
That's
because
true. That'd be an interesting
when you're in the
difference.
water, you really do need like we see a lot of aquatic predators with the very needle-like teeth for gripping onto slippery prey. So there could be some sort of like tooth-like projections along the beak
Mm-hmm.
that sort of answer a similar function.
Yeah, I mean they can have like more of a serrated shape to the beak, or yeah, having tooth-like
Yeah,
projections, something like that.
yeah. Like if you've ever seen the inside of a penguin's mouth, um,
Horrifying.
yeah, or a sea turtle's mouth.
Let's look at the sea turtle mouth. I think that could be fun. Ah, I see. Okay, so that's what I was doing when I was drawing. I didn't realize that that is something that has been shown on the art as well. Okay, cool. So what were we doing? Sea turtle mouth? Oh my gosh.
Yeah, there you go.
Wonderful. All right, so I'm going to make this a little smaller so we can properly do the tail because All right, so the tail structure, which I think is interesting, kind of goes like this.
Mhm.
And then we can have
A hypocircle. I can never say that word properly, but hypocircle tail fin.
we have the fin coming off the top here. And I guess we can, their tails can be flatter, I suppose, as they get further back and get less rounded and flatter to kind of function as the bottom part of that fluke. Well, now they're just, yeah, no, that's too. And I guess they can still have scales, but I mean, the ones that are like fully aquatic are probably just going to develop like fat and stuff like that.
Yeah. Well, it depends on the temperature of the water that they're living in, but
generally cold.
yeah.
Cooler on average than Earth. So
This is one of the things that in the Walking with Dinosaurs episode about marine reptiles, they made the pretty ludicrous claim that Biblaridion could reach 150 tons. But that estimate was based on similarly sized whales that have, very large amounts of blubber, which is the main thing that makes them heavy, whereas Biblaridion would have been a very sleek hunter of tropical waters and wouldn't have anywhere near the same kind of fat or blubbery insulation, and so it would have been significantly less heavy than that.
yeah, I mean, sometimes they're. There we go. But yeah, I mean, there are going to be some tropical ones because I imagine this is going to be quite a successful group of the suciforms, the gryphons.
Mm-hmm.
So people may not, see griffins very often besides the little ones. Let's go. Ah, too big. And too small. And I overcorrected. Oh. That shape looks passable.
Yeah, it's quite sort of mosasaur-y.
It is
in a
quite
good way.
mosasaur-y. In a good way, yeah. I mean,
It's
yeah,
like
I'm
a
not sure.
beach mosasaur.
And then it needs little flippers. So, I mean, you probably have flipper here. What? Flipper there.
Mm-hmm.
What are we looking at? They have a bit more articulation. These ones are a bit chunkier. I may give them a bit more of a streamlined structure, but I mean, if they're going to be floating around in the mid or high latitudes, I mean, it's going to get cold. So
Yeah, I think you could afford to have them be a little bit. Yeah.
let's there we go. That makes it a bit better. There we go. The scaleless gryphons. Oh, now flippers is... All right, I thought flippers were going to be a bit harder than I anticipated. Yeah, I thought they were going to be a bit harder, but these flippers kind of look fine.
Yeah.
All right, so we got one set there, and then what's interesting about these ones is that they seem to have like more prominent back flippers.
Yeah, that fourth image on the top row there, I'm not sure what that is, because that looks very much like they're depicting it as a foot-propelled diver, which I am not aware of any reconstructions that do that, but it has been 10 years since I did my dissertation, so new stuff may have come out. But that would be interesting.
But it does seem like the back legs in a lot of these are a bit more yeah, they're a bit more robust.
Yeah, that's what I did in one of my, well, actually, yeah, the dominant group of very large, secondarily marine ramphidonts on Tira is I really didn't want to give them the typical whale-like shape, so I had them evolve from foot-propelled divers. So instead of having a long tail, they have a relatively short tail, but very well-developed hind flippers that sort of beat back and forth like,
Oh,
well,
yeah, I remember that. There we go.
yeah, sort of almost frog-like to move them through the water. They still ended up looking too much like whales for my liking, but whatever. It's again the aquatic problem of everything that turns into a fish.
You win some, you lose some with your animal designs. Yeah, I mean, there's always, based on previous choices and stuff like that, there's always going to be some things. But, as long as I'm largely happy with it.
And actually, also the brood pouch is kind of a pre-adaptation for life in the water as well, because that means they don't necessarily need to return to the land to give birth.
Yes, 100%. Which is great, because they could just, they could just give birth in the water, live births in the water to little griffins.
Yeah.
Their tails are very long, and how I currently have them set up, because if I think I may need to move that part of the structure here. There, yeah, that looks a bit better. So, like, their tail technically starts like there.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm sure they'll figure out a bunch of different forms that will help them help them adapt to their new environment in the water there. So, and the other thing I kind of wanted to do was get their tail to kind of like taper off a bit more, and then add in some more of like a thin membrane that connects off of it. There we go. We did everything I expected we'd do in this episode and more.
Hmm.
And I haven't been doing too much for the Gryphons because I have my last push for my dissertation that I'm doing. And then also trying to get the last pieces of art. I have like 3 more little things to do to finish. I have 2 artworks to finish essentially, and I've just got a few more things I need to do before they come out. Why am I doing that? This is not a tail. This is just the fin. There we go. So I didn't have as much time to finish painting the other Gryphons as I would have liked.
Hmm.
So I only got around to the 4 sends, but well, that's fun.
Yeah.
He's cute.
Nice sort of seal, penguin, mosasaur, crocodile hybrid.
Yes, I like that it you can't necessarily place it too readily.
Yeah.
Very cute. Got soup crime. Do these Gryphons have a more worldwide distribution, or are they restricted to Zaalea? Yes, so these Gryphons, which we need a fancy name for. Oh, we don't have gray. What is that? Sindre? I think gray would be good, or black. I mean, they're probably going to have some gray coloration or something.
Yeah, that seems like a pretty safe bet.
Sindre? Eisenfarbe.
Wow.
Suddenly German heraldry.
Iron something. I don't know what Faber is.
I don't know offhand. Sable. I don't think we have black Gryphons. Sable could work, but
I mean, if they have counter shading, then they could be sort of black on top.
Yes, they could look very penguiny. Sable or Sindre. I mean, we'll figure it out. But I do like that. So they can be. Oh my goodness. Sindre.
Apparently Faber is just color. So Eisenfarbe is just iron colored.
Iron colored. Wonderful. So, to get back to that, so the Gryphons that are going to have more of a worldwide distribution are going to be the Sable or Cendré Gryphons, Gryphons, as well as the Goulet and Rose dragons. So the rodent-like ones, the sort of lizardy-like ones, the Snowdents, which occupy several different niches, and then the aquatic ones. So if somebody is living in Arukia, they're going to have the monotrematiforms, which I think Faye and Damon are in the running for their common name. Like Arukian Fae. I think Fae works a bit better because we have like sprites and brownies and whatnot already there in the naming convention. So I think that works pretty well. So yeah, you're gonna have these Fae. You're gonna have dragons, and then off the coast you'll have a variety of the marine Gryphons and the sea Gryphons, and then you'll also have all of these little things. So if someone from Arukia went to Zaalea, they would be surprised by all of these huge griffins, because they're used to just very little ones or ones that live in the water. Uh,
Yeah.
though, I mean, I'm not sure if they'd necessarily associate the ones in the water with, the little ones that eat seeds and things. The little furry snakes that get into their pantries and stuff. I don't know if
Yeah.
they'd associate them um, as belonging to the same thing. Uh,
Hmm.
and I think
I would
like,
guess probably not.
yeah, probably not. And then the same thing with the fairies, like like the main monotrematiforms that people in Zaalea and other places would be familiar with would be sprites, because they're the primary pollinator for many metamorphora and then monomorphora that are descended from metamorphora. I mean, some of them would use invertebrates or uh, because sprites come from a arboreal group of like long-beaked monotrematiforms. There are some non-flying arboreal monotrematiforms that I mean, I don't know, look kind of like sprites, but without the wings, that also engage in pollination.
Mhm.
But those it would be sprites and sprite-like things, which they would be most familiar with. So yeah, I guess somebody coming from Zaalea to Arukia would suddenly see minotaurs and owl bears and stuff, and like, what's going on? They're
Mhm.
little guys with wings, and now they're these huge 3 meter tall, bullish kind of mega herbivores.
Mm.
Um, and I do, like that. I do like, kind of like showing how these different groups sort of overlap and
Mhm.
interact. Because yeah, I did want to have these very distinct bioregions with their own branches of life after the last mass extinction. So it wasn't just this singular
Yeah.
sort of, I don't know, this sort of very singular like biogeography, and having um, the supercontinent kind of come together the way that it did, and especially with Aruki and Alea being quite geologically recent, only in the last more recent geologic period joining Basera, having a decent amount of mountains and deserts and things to kind of break them apart and separate them, kind of allows for that to happen. But I don't want to have like exclusive realms as well, because I think that would
Yeah.
be wouldn't carry that much verisimilitude, right? Like having like these little planets. It would essentially be like having these little distinct biomes
Mm.
for the fauna wouldn't work particularly well.
Yeah. There's always going to be some degree of dispersal between them. However, even if it's just restricted to like flying forms or something. But
Yeah, and that's the main
yeah.
thing with the dragons, right? Like, you know,
Mm.
while terrestrial dragons are going to be relatively restricted to um, Linneo the flying dragons are all over the place. Um, and there's probably going to be, I guess so far, I've kind of regionalized the flying dragons, where Arukia and Zaalea have like an eastern group, which are like the color coded ones. And I was thinking for Alea if I'd have a kind of like western group of flying dragons, but I don't know how I feel about that. I may just um I mean, there may be some more basal groups of flying dragons that exist in certain places or have continued to exist in Lanao, Taikea, or Alea, but we'll see how that emerges over time. I'm sure, you know, I'm sure we could make it work. Oh, but I think this is a good place to end off this installment of the Spec Evo live series, because we've come from, you know, just kind of getting through the notes and establishing things, breaking things off from this ancestral form about 75 million years ago, into the three main groups, you know, developing the these sort of basic body plans for each of these groups in that initial period, and then coming up with the sort of heraldry as the common naming convention for them. We've, you know, kind of developed them out into that first period with the orange antennae griffins, the rose griffins, and the Ver griffins, wherever they were. Where'd they go? Oh, here we go. We did a lot in that stream, actually. Between 75 and 50 million years, you know, branching them out, and then taking them further into that 50, 25 million year point where we're starting to see this turnover at the end of that 25 million years, and sort of populating the major niches and groups that we're going to have with the Ver griffins, the orange antennae griffins, including, what was that called? Like Linnaeosaurus?
Lielanosaura.
Lienanosaura, yes. Getting with their fluffy tails, allegedly fluffy tails, speculatively fluffy tails, which is quite cute. Creating these sort of apex quadrupedal predators. And then, you know, at the end of this kind of 25 million year mark, seeding a group of carnivores that is going to be sort of superseding, homophone there, superseding them, as well as, you know, getting our marine group up and going with this kind of type. I think we covered a lot of ground and kind of, you know, populated quite a large group of quite a large group. There's all the ones that I was able to get colored in at one point or another. People in the chat who are still hanging around, I will ask for your input as well. But Bib, do you have a favorite griffin?
I was just thinking about that, and
yeah, just as like kind of a recap.
In terms of morphology, it might be the big sort of ceratopsian one with the tusks and the thagomizer. I do very much like the silhouette of that one.
Yes.
But
that's a fun one.
I mean, the knife-faced baboons are very cool. I'm very fond of them as a concept. And just for the idea of the limbless eusocial goulet griffins, that is, because both of those, both eusociality and limblessness, are kind of associated with burrowing in some way, and just I've never seen the two of them combined, so it's quite a fun concept. I might have to steal that at some point.
Yeah, and I do like the goulet griffins. I think from a aesthetic, I mean, I do really like the orange griffins. I like you know, when I was kind of designing the early Courant griffin in particular, I really enjoyed that profile, and I also liked the, you know, the larger the rampant as well, and as they kind of develop I thought that was quite cool. Uh, and the Muppet handed Faucene Griffin as well. Like I do like the descendants of the Tene. The Tripon is I don't know, it was one of the earlier designs that I was kind of playing with, and um, I do enjoy the look of it. But I have been angling for the knife face baboons, though, since that was kind of spawned by the live series. I have really enjoyed that. Um, uh, and I guess, like, the Marine Griffin was a nice surprise, and being able to kind of chart that off of the Rose Griffins as well. So, like, the
Mm.
Rose Griffins are like this very diverse group, which includes very small, uh, you know, unassuming kind of animals, as well as these like vicious carnivores, and that are both in the ocean and on land.
Mm.
It's kind of like when you find out that like the hyrax and the elephant are
Yeah,
like
yeah, yeah.
closely related.
It's one of those very like high level branches like Apratheria and Laurageotheria and all those ones that yeah, it's always fun when you see those establish themselves.
Yes, and then Jake said the orange spotty one is nice, and Kate, yes, the Goulet are pretty neat. I think I'm pretty excited for them. The Goulet Griffins are fun, and I think there's going to be a lot of interaction, um, between people and the Goulet Griffins. I mean,
Yeah.
there's probably going to be like distinct species that start co-evolving. Oh, we need the Thagomizer in there. That start
Yeah.
co-evolving with humans. Um, and
You
that'll
find a nest of eusocial, aggressive, limbless superforms in your grain store. It's a bad day.
Yes. And like, yeah, and they've got, like they've got their beak and they got their two little tusks that they use to break open
Mm.
seeds or nip you on the finger when you're trying to
Yeah,
like
the
get them out.
warrior cost
Yes.
is going to be
Yes.
tough to deal with.
When you open up your food stores and are confronted by this slithering horde of uh warrior griffins, it's like this is not the day I had planned. um yeah, and no, very yeah, no, I had a lot of fun going through this. There were some forms that I kind of wanted. I mean, we did hit the goals that I was looking for as well. Um, we we were able to derive the brood pouch and get a pathway for that. I think them coming from the Devian equivalent of amphibians was quite good. And I mean, the what are they? What I call them? I think they are like lisiforms. Yes, like the soft-bodied ones. Um, yeah, soft-bodied. The soft-bodied ones. That's a whole nother group of animals to kind of look at. I'm sure they have a pretty decent distribution across Becerra as well. Um, uh, yeah, like some of them that I kind of got through, like that rampant griffin and the Tripon Griffin being able to be there, and then the goal with having this diversity of herbivores, as well as being able to get like a cursorial domesticate was good. Little on the fence as to whether that would have been the knife face baboon early on. Uh, but yeah, I do like it that they're in this the Dovians in Zaalea are developing in this very complex environment where there are other carnivores that are competing with them, and I think that is quite fun.
Mm.
And yeah, and with your suggestions about kind of the story of the evolutionary development with um, the carnivorous orange griffins becoming this dominant group, and then now being outcompeted and being pushed into fewer and fewer niches by the sanguine griffins is quite cool. And then we also have with herbivores as well, the Ver griffins kind of establishing themselves as the main group, but then being shifting and kind of opening up to support larger variation of the 10A griffins, like having that variety in the herbivores is quite cool. Like being able to tell that story and have the and have like the biosphere, the biogeography be a character as well, is quite cool.
Yeah.
And yeah, I don't, I think it was through this collaboration that a bunch of these critters came to exist. Because, I think the Goulet griffins and the knife-faced, the sanguine griffins certainly wouldn't have come about without this collaboration. So that was really fun. And yeah, thank you so much for agreeing to come here for, what was it, like almost 2 months? No, more than 2 months, because we had some off weeks.
Oh, well, yeah. You're very welcome. It was a lot of fun. I'm glad I could contribute. A lot of fun ideas came out of this.
And yeah, feel free to liberate the idea of limbless eusociality going forward.
I won't say too much yet, but I do have plans for a eusocial thing at some point. I don't think they're going to be limbless, but maybe I'll do that. We could have some eusocial apodomorphs, maybe. Hey, yeah, we'll see how it goes. But
and yeah, and as we mentioned before, Bib is going to be still on two streams, but now you're going to continue doing Pillar World, and you're going to be on the Let's Have a Booba stream doing Primates of the Boobaverse with Jake on Tuesdays. So that'll be, if you want more, speculative evolution biology stuff, then Bib is going to continue doing streams for that. We are going to be doing, domesticates, talking about primarily domestication for Tira for the World Building Festival this year. Could it be a two-parter? That's going to be very cool. And yeah, for this live stream, we're going to be continuing in Zaalea with culture building over the next 2 weeks before we shift over to inviting Let's Have a Booba on to work through the manual climate mapping method. Again, for the World Building Festival. So that'll be a fun time. Yeah, I think that's all of the plugs that we need to make for stuff we're doing, I believe. Yeah, I mean, thank you for everyone who's watched this series to the end. If you enjoyed this series, you can always jump over and support making more of Lands Unknown and the Speculative Atlas over on Patreon. Had a update and sneak peek drop on Friday, which I will say was very cute. I know Kate said that it's cute, but it was cuter than usual. Got an arboreal monotrematiform on there. And I think that's going to be the last sneak peek before the, yes, a monthly cutie pie. That'll be the last sneak peek before the next eco-region video is dropped, probably in July, mid-July. So that'll be cool. And I don't think I've asked folks to like and subscribe if you haven't already. 3 hours in the call to action, that's pretty good. And if you'd like to support Bib, you can head over to Bib's Patreon, which is in the description as well.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, so again, thank you to everyone for venturing into lands unknown with us this week. I'll see you again next week. And until then, I hope you have a good one. Bye.
Bye-bye.